All right, guys, welcome to the Unit 4 Quiz 1 study guide. I'm going through the even problems. There are odd problems with answers on the back for you to check your work if you want extra practice, as always. All right, so we're going to start off number 2 by solving this quadratic equation using the quadratic formula. Quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. The 6 is my a, the negative 10 is my b, and the 4 is my c. So we start by plugging those things in where they belong into the formula. All right, so the b value is negative 10. The a value is 6. And the c value is 4. After that, I like to simplify these three groups. 1, 2, 3, actually 4 groups. This guy down here also. So let's do that. So simplifying those 4 groups with just some multiplication, we end up with the following. 24 times 4. 80, let's see, that's 96, I believe. And then 12. Next, I go ahead and do my square root here. Oops. So let's take care of this square root next here. I'll do that work on the side here. We have the square root of 100 minus 96. 100 minus 96 is 4, and the square root of 4 is 2. So I could replace this whole thing here with 2. Whenever we have no more square roots, I like to split it up into 2 separate equations. This one gives me 12 over 12, which is 1. And the next one gives me 8 over 12, which is 2/3. And there's our 2 answers, 1 and 2/3. So that would be the value of n that would make this equation equal 0, is if n is equal to 1 or 2/3, and we got that by doing the quadratic formula. Let's go ahead and take a look at another one. Number 4 is another quadratic formula problem, but I think you'll find that these 3 problems are all a little bit different in the way that they work out in the end. So in this case, my a value is 1. My b value is negative 6. And don't get this b mixed up with the b that's in the problem. You might as well just think of the b that's in the problem here as an x. And then this guy here, we're going to think of that as the c. And here we go. Negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. Plugging them in where they go. All right, we're going to simplify our 4 groups. We do that guy, that guy, that guy, and that guy. So that's going to be 6 plus or minus 36 minus, those 3 things make negative 32 all over 2. Next, we're going to go ahead and simplify this thing here. I'll do that in red here. First of all, we have double negatives, which is a plus. So 36 plus 32 is 68. Now this one is not a perfect square root. So when you don't have a perfect square root, what you're going to do is you're going to break it down using multiplication. And I see that 68 breaks down into 2 times 2 times 17. And for every pair that you have, you can take that number out. And so we have 2 square root of 17. And that's what I'm going to replace that purple part there with. And if we do that, then we will have the following: 6 plus or minus 2 square root of 17 over 2. Now, at this point, we only have one more thing that we can do, and that is if these three numbers can all be divided by a common number, then we will divide it out. That's like reducing a fraction. And it turns out that all three of those can be divided by 2. And that leaves me with 3 plus or minus the square root of 17 over 1. We really don't need to include the 1 in the denominator though, so 3 plus or minus the square root of 17 is a good answer for that one. Let's go ahead and take a look at number 6, another quadratic formula problem, but this one will have yet another little twist to it. Once again, my A is 1, my B is -4, and my C is 6. So, using our quadratic formula and plugging the numbers in, we will have the following. Simplifying our 4 groups, 1, 2, 3, and 4, we will have 4 plus or minus 16 minus 24 over 2. Next, we're going to go ahead and take care of this guy here. I'll do that in red. So, first of all, 16 take away 24 is -8. Now, when you have a negative inside the square root, we take it out as an I. Next, we're going to break down our 8. It breaks down into 2 times 2 times 2. And for every pair, we could take 1 out. So we have 2i radical 2. And that's what we're going to put where that square root was. So now I have 4 plus or minus 2i root 2 over 2. And once again, we want to reduce if possible, and we can. I can reduce all of these by 2, which gives me 2 plus or minus 1i. So we can just put I over 1, which means we don't really need to put the 1 on the bottom either. So there's our final answer there. Imaginary answer. That means there is no solution for k that's a real number. You only get imaginary answers. All right. This one says solve by taking square roots. Now technically you could use the quadratic formula if you wanted to move the 5 over here by subtraction. It has to equal 0 if you want to do the quadratic formula. But why use the quadratic formula if it's harder? This is much easier, solving by taking square roots. The only time you can do that is if you have a quadratic equation of the form like this. In other words, there's no bx. There's just an ax squared and a c. When you have that, you could solve it just by taking square roots. And all you have to do is just get the r by itself. So the first thing I would do is I would add 4 on both sides. And then I would divide by 16. And to solve for r, we just need to take a square root. But we do need to remember that when you take a square root, you get a plus and a minus. Now the square root of 9 over 16 is the square root of 9 divided by the square root of 16. Which means we could just take the square root of those separately. The square root of 9 is 3, and the square root of 16 is 4. And so my answer is plus and minus 3/4. Sometimes those problems can get a little bit more complicated, so I'm giving you another one. They get more complicated in the process of simplifying, but here we go. Let's try that one. We're going to subtract 9 on both sides first. Okay, so this one's going to be a little bit more work to simplify at this point. First of all, once again, we're going to separate that into 2 separate square roots. Square root of negative 49 over the square root of 6. The next thing that we're going to do there is we're going to take out the, well, let's simplify this separately. I'll just do that really quick. Negative 49. So that negative comes out as an I, and the square root of 49 is 7. So I've got 7i there. So that's what I'm going to replace the top with. Another thing is we don't like having square roots in the bottom. So to fix that, we would just multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of 6. That's called rationalizing. And so we would end up with 7i square root of 6 over 6. And sometimes you might be able to reduce these numbers, or you might need to break down the square root a little bit more, but 6 doesn't break down. So this is as simple as it gets here. Okay, but that's pretty much it. So that would be an example of a little bit of a harder one when solving by taking square roots. All right, so we've learned how to graph quadratic equations in two forms. This is what we call vertex form. Vertex form has a number in the front here, an h and a k also. The h and the k are what make up the vertex of your parabola. And if the a is a positive number, then you have a happy face parabola. If it's a negative, then you have a sad face parabola. Okay, so we can graph this. First of all, let's look at our h and k. My vertex is going to be negative 3 and negative 1. Remember, you always do the opposite of this number, but keep this one the same. So I'm going to find my vertex, negative 3, negative 1, which is right here. Next, we're going to look at our a value. Since it's negative, we do have a sad face parabola. So I'm looking for a parabola that will look something like that, roughly speaking. Okay? We also learned how to graph quadratics in standard form. Standard form looks like this. Okay, to do this, you have to do a couple of things. First of all, you're going to want to find your vertex. And to find your vertex, it's a two-step process. First, you find your h value, I guess we could call it. You could also call it x, but I'll just call it h. The h value is negative b over 2a. After that, you take your answer and you plug it in for x to find y. Or I should say k, to find k. And once you have those two things, you'll have your vertex. Okay? But other than that, the other thing that you'll need to do is you'll need to identify whether you have a happy face or sad face parabola. And that's the same as it was last time. If you have a positive a, it's a happy face. If you have a negative a, it's a sad face. So let's go ahead and begin here. This is my a, and this is my b. So to begin, to find the vertex, we're going to do h is equal to negative b over 2a. The b value is negative 12. The a value is 2, which means I've got 12 over 4, which is 3. So my h value is 3. To find the k value, we're just going to take this answer and plug it into the equation for x. So we have 2 times 3 squared minus 12 times 3 plus 15. Powers are first. Don't forget your orders of operation. Then you can do your multiplication. And then finally you can do your addition and subtraction from left to right. 18 take away 36 is negative 18. Add 15, you get negative 3. So I've got my k, I've got my h, and therefore I have my vertex, which is 3, negative 3. So we'll go ahead and graph that right there. Next, we're going to decide, we've got our vertex taken care of, so now we decide whether it's a happy face or sad face parabola. Since my a value is positive, it's a happy face parabola, so it would look something like that. That's graphing in standard form. Next, I just want to make sure you guys are aware of some vocabulary regarding the parts of a quadratic. The vertex is the part where the parabola curves. So that point there would be 2, 1. The y-intercept is where it touches the y-axis, so that would be 0, -3. There are 2 roots in this case. That's where it touches the x-axis. It would be these 2 points, which are 1, 0, and 3, 0. And then finally, the maximum value or minimum value. Well, when you have a parabola that's going this way, you have a maximum value. It's the highest point on the graph. So we have a max, but we don't have a min. And the maximum value is the y value at that point. The y value at that point is 1. So the maximum value is y equals 1. So those are the parts of a quadratic equation, or parabola, I should say. All right, and then number 18, we want to also be ready to rewrite quadratic equations that are in standard form into vertex form by completing the square. And that involves a series of steps that we talked about in lesson, I think it was 4.3. All right, so step 1 is to move, and I would encourage you guys to get those steps out and look at them because there are a lot of them. Step 1 is to move the c value to the other side. The next step is to factor out the a. Divide it out. In this case, the a is -2, so I divide -2 out of both of these and put it on the outside, and that's what I get as a result. The next step is we're going to complete the square. That means we're going to create a new number inside the parentheses here. Okay, how you get that new number is by taking half of that middle number and then squaring it. -2 to the second power is 4, and so that's what's going to go there. Okay, so that would be the next step. The next step after that is to fix the balance. So if I add something on the left, I also need to add something on the right. What do we add? Well, we do -2 times 4. We multiply those, and whenever we get, we put that over there. -2 times 4 is -8. I'll rewrite what I have now as a result. All right, and the last step is to factor on the left side. And when we factor a perfect square trinomial, which is what that is after you complete the square, it always looks like this. The only thing that's going to change is what number goes there, and that number will always be half of that middle number there. So in this case, it'll be -2. And then on the other side here, we can combine these together. 5 take away 8 is -3. And I forgot, we actually do have one more step. The last step is to move the 3 over. So I'm going to add 3 on both sides like that. And that will give us our final result of -2 x minus 2 squared plus 3 equals y. And so you'll have that as well. And just so you guys know, these questions on the exam this will be worth 3 points, okay? It won't be worth just 1 because there's a lot of work here. You'll see also that some of the other questions aren't worth just 1 point. It just depends on how much work goes into it and how much time we spent on it. So this is a pretty big one. You'll have one question like that, and it will be worth 3 points. It'll be multiple choice, and so spend time on that one. Make sure you're ready for it. All right. But that being said, we're going to call it a day there, and hopefully that was helpful. and we will see you guys in class. Have a good one.